How do you go about building a super team in Dynasty that can compete not just for one season, but for multiple seasons, possibly the duration of the league? Well, today I'm going to show you how to do exactly that. In this video, we're going to show you how to build a Dynasty team the right way, and it all starts right now. So the number one thing that you can do, I made another video on my channel, how to build a Dynasty team through the startup draft Dynasty startup strategy. So you should definitely check out that video. In that video, I presented strategies that I use in Dynasty startups to make sure that I get the most possible value in the startup, while also focusing on creating a winner right away. It's tricky, but it can be done, and I show you how to do it in that video. Building your team the right way from the get-go is obviously the easiest way to succeed in Dynasty, and the startup is where everything begins. Overall, the best Dynasty managers are those who can balance the future with the here and now, and those individuals can craft rosters that can win right away and in the future. That is the goal of Dynasty, right? We want to win every year. So in this video, we're not going to focus so much on the Dynasty startup, but we're going to focus on the players with existing rosters and how to take that roster into a perpetual winner. A lot of times I get the question, what kinds of players should I target? And in some ways, that's the right question. In other ways, it's the wrong question, because what we really need to do in Dynasty is we need to be focused on making our rosters valuable. Acquiring rookie picks and younger players with upside are ways we can make our rosters full of desirable assets that other teams are going to want to trade for. And while some of these assets won't help us win right away, it is far easier to go from a roster that's full of younger players, draft picks, rookie picks, to a contending team than it is for a team with a bunch of veterans that are past their prime, that may help you win, they may not help you win. We're talking 28, 29, 30-year-old players, running backs, receivers, it doesn't matter. Like, it's way easier to go from a team full of desirable assets to a winner than it is for a team full of veterans to get to that spot if they're not there already. And while it's true, like, you can definitely build a veteran laced team that's going to be a winner, but it's just probably not going to be a sustained winner if the majority of your players are veterans. So it doesn't necessarily mean, when you're going about reshaping your roster, that all of your players have to be younger players. There can and should be a balance to this once your roster is complete. But let me give you some examples of why it is wise to target younger players with upside in Dynasty. And I'm going to use the golden standard. I'm going to use Sam Laporta and CJ Stroud. Just think of where they were a year ago to where they are right now. Both of these players broke out in a major way in 2023. Laporta finished as the tight end 1 overall and the tight end 3 in fantasy points per game last season. And he is just 23 years old at the tight end position. It's crazy that he did that in year 1. CJ Stroud finishes the quarterback 11 overall and the quarterback 7 in fantasy points per game. Both of these players, as I said, increased their Dynasty values immensely. But it can go the other way too when you invest in some of these rookie players. So let's take the example of Bryce Young, number 1 overall pick, had a terrible season last year. Young finished as the quarterback 23 overall, quarterback 29 in fantasy points per game. Kyle Pitts, same deal, is another player that Dynasty gamers have been in on for a long time. He's a promising tight end with a lot of potential, just hasn't produced on a consistent basis. However, now the outlook looks a lot better for Kyle Pitts now that he has Kirk Cousins and they draft Michael Penix. But even if you drafted Bryce Young and Kyle Pitts on your Dynasty team, you are not up the creek without a paddle. These players still have pretty decent Dynasty value, really good Dynasty value in the case of Kyle Pitts. And so the Pitts situation, like I said, changed, so the Dynasty value increased. So mostly when you're targeting these younger players, we want to focus on a couple things using those examples. We want to use draft capital, because draft capital shows us that their respective NFL teams have invested in them and will likely give them more chances. And we want to be focused also on the situation. Will they have opportunity to compete for a starting spot right away, or are they going to be sitting on the bench for a while? And so going back to Sam Laporta, Laporta was in the ideal situation for a number of reasons. One, that the Lions had a good offensive line. They had a quarterback who wasn't going to run around a ton and had a history of being able to throw if given time to throw. And also, there were limited competition for targets at the position. So even when we get this perfect scenario, though, it isn't always a guarantee that the players are going to perform on our fantasy teams. I mean, Laporta is the shining example, and some of you are probably telling me to shut up about Sam Laporta. Like, obviously, getting him now is almost impossible. Not impossible, but almost impossible, as his value is so high. But he's the shining example, especially at the tight end position, of a player hitting extremely early. So some players to target this year, and I recognize now that most of these players are wide receivers. Keon Coleman's in a great situation to produce right away. Ladd McConkey, Caleb Williams in a single quarterback league, Jalen Polk, all of the Roman Wilson, all of these players have very low values right now, but they're younger players who could absolutely skyrocket because they're going to have the opportunity, and we'll find out relatively quickly how good they are because of the opportunity they're likely to get. So targeting players like these are great ways to strengthen the value of your dynasty roster. Also, personally, I would avoid investing heavily in running backs unless we were talking the elite of the elite running backs. We're talking Breece Hall and Bijan Robinson. And the reason being is that running backs tend not to hold their value as well as other positions. And it is very easy, at least in my experience, you can let me know what you feel like in the chat, to acquire a veteran running back in a trade. I view running backs as the cherry on top of the Dynasty Sundae. And therefore, when I'm trying to acquire a valuable roster, I tend to seek out other positions. So you've got a valuable roster. You've made moves, calculated moves to acquire youth, maybe some rookie picks. Once you've built this solid foundation for yourself, full of high quality assets, now you can carefully go about the offseason, seeking out trades that make sense for your team if your goal is to be a win now team. Some teams are going to be more of a rebuild depending on your roster. Other teams, once you've acquired a lot of high value assets, it may be time to go pick a piece here or there to go target and to trade for. So you can use trade tools like ADP tools. You can use Keep Trade Cuts dynasty rankings to help you target players that have been solid producers in the past. So for example, if we're just going to use Keep Trade Cuts dynasty rankings, you could probably go out there and trade. And we already talked about Keon Coleman, but you could trade Keon Coleman for Deebo Samuel if you have too much unknown youth and want a receiver that has produced in the past for your fantasy team. Now, I probably wouldn't start there because Keep Trade Cuts dynasty rankings, it's not really the perfect measure of the market. My guess is that you could probably get something on top of Deebo Samuel in that trade if you're going to make it, but it's just an example. Like if your roster's full of these rookies, full of these younger players, like and you want to leverage some of that youth for some win now, you can easily do that. It's much easier to do it that way than it is to try to be acquiring Keon Coleman for Deebo Samuel, if you get what I mean. So starting there, starting with the assets that are valuable is the most important thing to do when you're building your dynasty team. So another example, dynasty manager could easily trade Ricky Pearsall for Cooper Kupp or something like that, like trading a receiver with some upside for an older veteran that's going to produce for your fantasy team, but we're not sure how much longer he's going to produce, is a perfect example of a trade that you might be able to make. Those two players are very close in Keep Trade Cuts rankings. And it's way easier, like I said, to trade for veterans than to trade away veterans in Dynasty. So by building a Dynasty team the right way, Dynasty managers can operate from this position of strength. And so to wrap it up, like I said, it is way easier to build a dynasty team by starting with a valuable roster. This means it is wise to draft youthful players with upside and to acquire rookie picks in the dynasty startup draft. This is the cheapest you're going to get rookie picks is in the startup draft because everybody wants to make those picks. This doesn't mean you need to go full productive struggle, but it is much easier to build a dynasty team from this position of strength that we talked about, having assets other dynasty gamers want, than it is to draft strictly aging veterans, players that are win now, that are eventually going to lose value in the short term. So once the roster is full of valuable assets, then you can go about making careful and concise trades to mold the team into a both win now team and a team that can win in the future. After all, the goal, as we've talked about here, is to win every year. So why not build a team that has the best chance of doing that? So again, let me know what you think of the comments of this video. If you liked it, click the like button, subscribe to the channel, and until next time, build those dynasty rosters the right way. You can hit me up on my DMs at Seth_DIEWOLD for any questions on Twitter. Follow me there on Twitter. And until next time, be good, everybody.